This is Bailie from the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, POV Gen Z. And today we're talking about the fear of turning 30. I'm here with my mentor, Mo, who helps me with literally everything possible that comes with relationships. So yeah, he's here to help you too. Hi, Mo.
What up? Always good to be here, babe. Let's do it.
As you know, I have a boyfriend named Nick, and we've been getting pretty serious recently, if I do say so myself. And we are having the pre-talks of like getting engaged and stuff. So of course, like that comes with dreaming about my wedding day. I was a little girl who like didn't really dream about her wedding day. I don't know. So like now all those dreams come now. So we were dreaming about it together. The older I get, the smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller I picture my wedding day to be. The older he gets, it's the exact opposite. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I didn't really know how big he was thinking until we kind of started talking about groomsmen and bridesmaids. And he was like, yeah, if I could choose my groomsmen right now, I probably would have about 17. And he sends me a list that of 17 people. And I was like immediately frantic because I have like 3 friends. Like I was looking at the list that he sent me. Every single one of these people he talks to every day. He is truly, to me, it truly feels like he is best friends with all of them, even though that's insane to have 17 people as your groomsmen. But I agree with him. I mean, I look at the list and they're like, yeah, like all these people need to have a significant part of your wedding day. Like this makes sense. So I started to freak out naturally because I have 3 friends, like I said. And I'm like, gosh, what the heck am I going to do? I started thinking like, well, I love all of their girlfriends. A lot of them are married or have girlfriends. Should I just like have them walk down the aisle with them? And like, I love them. They can just stand by me. Like, that's fine. I like, they're great. And I was telling my friend this. She was like, Bailey, that's so weird. Like, do not do that. That is so weird. Please do not do that. And I was like, okay, right. So I'm not really sure what else to do. So I started freaking out because I don't have a lot of time. I feel like I don't have a lot of time. If we get engaged early next year, I would love to be engaged and married within the same year. That's my plan. So I'm starting to freak out because I want to have really good friends that are next to me. And I am so grateful for the friends I do have who I love and can truly call best friend, which is awesome. But I'm like, I just started feeling bad. I'm like, what the heck? Like, there has to be something said for him having 17 best friends. That does not count just like regular friends that he has that are just invited to the wedding. These are like his closest people. So I'm like, there's got to be something said about him having 17 best friends and me having 3. There has to be something to say about that. So I started digging deeper into it and I'm like, okay, I'm 27 right now. I have less than 3 years till I'm 30. And I feel like right now, relationally, like what's done is done. You know, I messed up the friendships I did on purpose, on accident, whatever the case was. That has all happened. And I'm so grateful for my friends now. But I can't help but feel like regretful that I didn't foster or fix or nurture some friendships that I've had in the past to make me also have 17 people standing next to me instead of just 3.
Right.
Not saying that like quality or quantity is everything, but like I said, there has to be something to say for him having 17 and me having 3. I feel like there's a ticking time bomb a little bit until I get married. And I know that we refer to, when people that listen to this podcast, we refer to like my life, my problems, all of my growth. Like we talk about all that as the quote unquote Bay project. So, meaning at the end of the day, I can only control me, my thoughts, my actions. That's the Bay project.
Right.
So I started thinking about in terms of everyone's life project and how do people like me who feel like we're working against the clock almost make the most of our last couple years in our 20s, because I don't want to panic. I don't want to go like full, apocalyptic mode and like be crazy about it all. But I also like know that I have messed up a lot of friends. And there have been times where I have been a really bad friend. There's been times when I've been negligent to friendships where I didn't even know that I was hurting or lessening a friendship. I didn't even know. So in the last 3 years that I have in my 20s, what can we do to, I guess, get the most out of our relationships that we can? Like, I guess in another like phrase, like I know there's a lot of things that people think about doing when they are getting closer to 30. Work comes up, marriage comes up, health, fitness. There's so many things that come up and then you're trying to like cram into life before hitting that 30 mark. But I feel like people don't really talk as much about friendships because so many girls that I know already have. They already have their like great group, solid girl gang that they're hanging out with and are like so pleased with it. And I can't help but feel jealous because I'm like, dang, I wish I had like a tribe of girls around me too that I could call best friend. People that I felt safe with. Like I don't have that village of people like Nick does. So like how do we go about doing that? I have so many questions. So like I don't even know. I guess like for I don't know, do you want to respond to any of that first of all?
Yeah, I think there's the immediate and then there's the long term. And so it's pretty amazing that you're in a relationship with a guy who's completely different than you, which is great. I
Yeah.
think you guys have some, and I've, full disclosure to our audience, I've never met Nick, never had a conversation with him. Anybody who watches this knows as much about him as I do. So my audience has heard as much about Nick as I have. And so, but what I do know from you is that the guy's the life of the party. People love him. He makes friends easy. So do you. You're the life of the party. People love you. It's easy to get along with you. So you guys share that in common. What's different is that in this particular instance, he's got 17 best friends. And I believe that those guys are all probably really close. I would assume that what he is most focused on in talking about marriage is, okay, for the premarital, where are me and all my boys going to go golfing? And a big golf outing of, a bunch of foursomes just, rolling around the golf course and just causing havoc. And you're like, okay, I've got 3 friends, so I can maybe make a foursome. And if you don't know what a foursome is in golf, it's the do you know what a foursome is in golf? It's the 2 golf carts. There's 2 people in one.
Yes.
So and you're like, okay, I've got 3 friends. I can make a foursome. Nick's going to take over the entire golf course. You're like, I got it,
I'm like, I can maybe make a dinner reservation.
I can
And
maybe
that's
make
it.
a dinner reservation for a small table. And he's going to take up the entire dining hall with just his buddies. And so
Literally.
of all the weddings that I've ever done, and you know me, I've done a lot of weddings. You know, a lot of the girls that I've done weddings for. Whenever I've done a wedding, it's always the opposite, right? And I think that's one of the things we're talking about right now. It's usually the girl who has 17, 18, 19 people, and they've got to narrow it down to like 8, which is like pretty standard now. And the guys are usually like, I don't know anybody. Like, maybe I can ask my bellman, my gardener, the guy who washes my car. And then, it's like, then I'm doing these weddings, and I'm like meeting everybody. I'm asking the girls like, oh, how do you know so and so? Oh, we've been best friends since we were 6 years old, or whatever. And then when I talk to the guys, I'm like, oh, how long have you known this guy? And they're like, I don't know, about a year. But for you, it's completely the opposite. And so it's now a cause for panic. And I love what you said. You're like, what do I do now? I can't go back 10 or 15 years and say, I'm thinking about my wedding in 20 years. Would you like to be in it? Like, you are about 3 years away at the very end, and that's if you're to say, I am going to get married at 30. Yeah, I mean, that's cause for concern. It is not the right word. I think that specific problem, if you want to call that a problem of, oh my gosh, I need more people, that'll work itself out, right? And let's just say that you guys decide to get married and figure, you'll be like, okay, well, this is who we're going to have walk down the aisle and all that that works itself out. I do love the underlying question, which is the introspective part of Bailey is now saying, of all the relationships that I have, I can really point to about 3 girls that I would call very close friends to me. And again, that's not cause for concern. You're talking to a person that has a very small circle of really close friends. And all my friends, my close friends, in fact, I was talking to one of them today.
Love him.
We've known each other for 25 years now, and he's one of my best buddies. But there's only a couple people that really fit that for me. The rest are acquaintances, and so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, society would tell us you got to have these big groups of people and all that. I don't believe in any of that. So, Bailey, I think that you are doing just fine. Now, I think you're learning a lot about relationships, and at the same time, I'm glad that you're introspective about the relationships that maybe have been hurt over the years. And you and I have talked a lot about those. And for anybody listening to this, especially females, girls can hold grudges. And my hope for all of my student athletes, all my swimmers, all the girls that ever came through my program was always to reconcile. And sometimes those relationships were reconciled and sometimes they weren't. You and I have talked about a lot of your friendships where you're like, we are best friends, and then what happened, right? And so, yes, you can't do anything about what happened, but it's about the here and now. And so,
Right.
when you're talking about those specific relationships, how do you grow those relationships? And then another question I would have, Bailey, is do you want more friends? Do you want a bigger circle, or do you just feel pressured to have that?
I think a lot of girls can relate to what I'm about to say, but I think a lot of girls, like, we've talked about this a lot, but I think a lot of girls think that they have really good friends. And this might be the same for boys too. I think it is, because there are some of Nick's friends where I'm like, you didn't know his love languages. I learned that like within the first conversation of like my conversation with him. He's like, "What? His love languages are words of affirmation?" He's been like friends with them for like 10 years. I'm like, "Yeah." But anyways, I feel like a lot of girls think that they are really close, but there's a lot that goes behind the scenes with girl friendships. Like so much gossip, so much like talk about other people behind their backs, or competitiveness, like having the feeling the need to compete against each other to be the best in anything, whether that's looks or job or smarts or boys or whatever the case is. And when I look at a lot of girls' wedding parties that I've been to, I can point to quite a few of them where they have had girls in their wedding party that may not have been the most healthy of relationships. So when I think about like, do I want more friends? I'm happy. I'm happier to have friends that are true friends, that I do not do that about, because I have in the past, and it sucks and it has ruined friendships for me, rightfully so. But the 3 really good friends that I have right now, never in a million years would I talk crap behind their back or do anything like that to them, because I love them, care about them, and I've learned from my mistakes. So when I answer your question about do I want more friends, I think I'm tired and kind of burned from my experiences with past friends, where I'm like scared to go through something like that again. Whether that's they burned me, I burned them, whatever the case is, I'm scared. I'm scared to have more friends, and do that all over again. But at the same time, yeah, it would be really amazing to have a few more girls that I love and adore and that really understand me. I just in my 27 years of living, it's been very few where I feel like we get each other on like all different kinds of levels. And I'm excited to talk to you about this because I know that you can categorize. I know that Lim does something different for you than Jonesy does, or that those are kind of the only 2 friends.
That's all I got.
I'm curious to hear like what you have. And also, sorry, just from the other side of things, I don't think a lot of girls, especially, or at least girls I have met, are really looking for more friendships anyways. Or when I say friendships, I mean very close best friend like relationships. Not just like cordial friends, because those are, those are easy to have. But I'm talking about girls that are really looking for best friendship. I don't see a lot of girls my age looking for that. They either have that and are already stoked, or that's kind of my only option. I feel like everyone already has their friends like dialed in. So I feel like I'm like, okay, well, now no one else is open to having a best friendship anymore because they already have their capacity. That's my first question to you is like, do you continue looking for friends? Like, are you always on the hunt for someone that could be your best friend? Or like, what does that look like for you? Because I feel like the older you get, well, we'll get into that in a second. You answer that question first.
Yeah, that's a really good topic. And so I'll get to my main point, to the direct answer to your question. But before that, your question about, I feel like all the girls that I know either have their friend circles or they're doing their own thing. And so I think you're learning a good life lesson. And I think it's a lesson that and my parents and your parents are about the same age. Your parents had you a little bit older. My parents had me very young. But either way, both of our sets of parents are old enough to remember that you get married early. So let me ask you this: how old was your mom and dad when they got married?
24.
Okay, ish. When my mom and dad got married, my dad was 21 and my mom was 19. My mom had me when she was 21 years old. Okay.
Wow.
And so that's what it used to be. And the reason I say that is because when I grew up, my parents' friends were based on who I was playing baseball with, who I was on the swim team with, the things that I was doing, meaning that your life is, in terms of your friendships, is a lot of times dictated by where you are in life. And your generation, Generation Z, is getting married later. It would have been unheard of to be saying, I want to be married by the time I'm 30, just 20 years ago. But now that's normal. Like if you get married by the time you're 30, a lot of people will say, wow, like, why so early?
Good job. You did it.
Yeah, well, now you're adulting, right? But when you have kids, for instance, your whole life is changed, and now your life is dictated by your kids, right? Right now, Bailey, your life is dictated by what you want to do, the things that you do, your ambitions. Now you have another person in your life, in Nick, to say, well, now if I want to go do something, I want to see if he's available, or if we're going to do, like, it's different with him than it is with your friends, even, because friends, it's like, oh, well, maybe I'll see you, maybe I won't. But when you have a significant other, when you have a serious boyfriend, then you start having to make decisions that are, or we, not just me. Well, if you get married, now you guys are going to start going to church together, and you're going to both be. Is he your age? Or are you guys the same age?
Yes, same age.
Okay. So you guys are both 27. So if you guys got married, you'd be both 28, the 29th. So you would probably be in a young adults ministry, for instance, at church, and then you get to know other young adults. And most of those young adults would probably be without kids. But then one couple starts having kids, and then another and another, and then that shifts that circle of friends to now people with kids that are in, diapers, and then preschool. So your life isn't dictated by anything yet, Bae. Your life right now is exactly whatever you want it to be. And so I think a lot of these questions are going to be answered when you decide to tie the knot and take that next step. And there's no wrong way to do it. And that's why I love talking to Gen Z, because everything is pushed back, right? Adolescence is pushed back now to a later age, and getting married and having kids and all those kind of things. And so that's my long way of saying, don't stress. If you take this to the next stage, which would be, okay, I think we want to get married. I always talk about the concept of the inner circle. I think friendships are really important. Yes, to your question, I do continually look for more friends, but I'm not saying I need a lifelong friend and I need that friend now. We always we always talk about friends in three categories, right? Friends for a reason, friends for a season, and friends for a lifetime. Every time I make a friend, every time I have a new friendship, I'm thinking when I look at that person or that couple or that family, is this a friend for a reason or a season or a lifetime? Lifetime friends are hard to come by. They're few and far between. You mentioned a couple of my forever friendships. And yeah, those guys have been with me through thick and thin. They know more about me than anybody else. There are so many things that have
Mm-hmm.
gone, that have happened in my life over the last 25 years plus that I've known each of those guys, that other people, they can't, they, even if they were a great person and I looked at this, at a new dude and I was like, man, that guy, I love that dude. I want to be a lifetime friend with him. Well, he's 25 years behind in my relationships with those other guys. And I'm 25 years behind with him. Not that that's bad, and I can't have another forever friend, but
Mm-hmm.
some of those heartbreaks and those ups and those downs, those peaks and those valleys, those friendships are earned. And so I'm glad that now you're looking at the friendships that you have and saying, these are the girls in my life who have earned that spot in my life. And so my encouragement to you, and then I'd love to hear as you have other questions on this or whatever, is are you intentional about those relationships so that you give them a chance to move to the next whatever that is with you? Because when you get married, your life is going to change, your friendships are going to change, your friend group is going to start to change.
Mm-hmm. That is definitely good to know. I didn't really think about it that way, but I think it also makes me angry at the same time because I really don't. One of the things I was journaling about was that I really don't love the fact that some of my friends or convenient friendships, like friends are just happen by situation. I just so happened to go to this one church and be in this group. And now all of my lifelong friend choices are out of like just by chance. Like, I think that causes another like fear of panic in me because I have FOMO like times 1,000. So like, if only I had gone to that event, or if only I would have joined that rec league, or if only I would have changed jobs and met these coworkers, or that really stresses me out because I feel like it comes back to like, it's like, I know that Lim was in your freshman, like he was your room or your roommate or something, right? Like in college, like by chance, right? What about Jonesy? What was Jonesy? How did you meet him again?
So that's actually flipped around. Jones and I knew each other from
Oh,
college,
okay.
and so we kind of knew each other because we were in the same class and just kind of hit it off and we're friends. He was friends with everybody. I'm very particular about my friends, but he's life of the party. Everybody loves him. He's a guy. Me, I just look for people who are funny and have witty senses of humor, and so we just kind of got to know each other. Ended up, going to Israel and on a school trip together with some of our other buddies who I remain close with. Lamb, we worked at churches together in separate youth groups, and we would see each other back in the day before there was cell phones and pagers and stuff like that. I'd only see him like 4 times a year, but we always were kind of on the same wavelength. He's a little bit older than me, but we were at the same stage of life. People ask me this question all the time, like, how do you have your close friends? And I hold my life close to the vest. There's not a lot of people that I open up to. I have a small family, and even my extended family, I don't talk to a lot of them as much. Not that because I don't love them or anything. It's just I'm doing life in front of me right now. The people that I'm influencing or that are in front of me right now, that's what's important to me. That's the win principle for me, right? What's important next? Again, that's
Mhm.
another reason. So this is a great example for our listeners. One of the reasons I really wanted to do this podcast is for Bailie and I, we don't connect all the time. Like when like all my swimmers, all my student athletes, when they're my student athlete, I see them for 8 hours a day. I see them for three hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, and then I see them a ton after that, just doing go traveling and all this kind of stuff. But all of a sudden, 4 years is over, and it's like, hey, see you later. It was nice to know you. And I think for people
Totally.
that's hard. And Bailie, remember the conversation that I had with you, that anybody who's listening to this, who's ever had me as a coach, I've had this conversation, and especially for those who I'd been close with. And Bailie and I were very close by the time she ended up at the end of her career as both a swimmer and a college kid. And I had a conversation, and you may or may not know when I had this conversation with you. I can't remember exactly when it was for you because I have it with every single one of my student athletes, but it went something like this. Bailie, you're coming to the end of your college. You and I have spent a lot of time together over the last 4 years talking about life and leadership, and you've been in my group, and we've been doing these things. I've seen you every morning, every afternoon. I've seen you on the weekends for swimming, all these kind of things. And now you're graduating and you're moving on. I just want to let you know that as our relationship moves into a different stage of life, I am here for whatever you need from me. So let me know. Do you want to talk once a year? Do you need to talk to me once a quarter? Do you not need to talk to me ever again, which I will not feel bad. I just need to know, how can I serve you? Because my entire journey with you over the past 4 years has been to serve you. And I know we've talked a lot, and you've done a lot for me as a coach and helped me grow as a coach. But my goal has always been to put into you and influence you, because that is my responsibility to you as a coach to a student athlete. And then I would, a lot of student athletes, and I can't remember exactly how you responded, Bay, but people, they're not always ready for that because we don't like change. We think we're just going to wake up the next morning, and even though the swim season's over, and even though college is over, we're all going to be best friends. And I think that's what a lot of people, and I'm going to turn this around into a question in a second for Gen Z, but I'm used to that. I'm used to endings and beginnings, right? There's a great a book called Necessary Endings, and if you haven't read Necessary Endings, you need to read it. And I think I've either read it with you, Bay, or we have actually talked about it. I talk about it with everybody, especially for those who are on the leadership journey, like you were the past couple of years. We spent a lot of time together talking about leadership and influence. And so my goal always is to say, there's an ending and there's a beginning. And the reason I do that for young people is because I want them to be able to do that in their lives from then on out. I want them to be able to be at a job and be able to say, hey, I'm at this job. I've been here for 6 months or 6 years or whatever, and I'm leaving. Who do I need to have intentional conversations with? So, Bailie, how have those been for you over the years? Because I know that a lot of your relationships, like we just talked about, and you've been very vulnerable about this, a lot of your friendships would end abruptly. And sometimes it was your fault. Sometimes it wasn't. Usually it was the fault of both, like it is for a lot of young people and especially young females. But now you are coming back and saying, I'm learning about that now. I'm learning from that now. So what does that look like for you? And how does that change your calculus in the way you do relationships now?
Well, that's such a good question. And I actually have a perfect example. So my coworker, I've talked about him before, his name's Seamus. And you really liked his name. Whoa. He joined our team 8 months ago, and he's from Jersey, very East Coast person, love him to death. And it just was not the right job for him at all. He didn't like it. He doesn't want to be relational. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. We deal with like $20 an hour candidates who might not be the most reliable, especially on a temporary basis. Yeah. And it's the worst when they say they're going to show up and they don't. It's the worst. So I don't blame him for not wanting to deal with that. It is a lot of work. But his last day was today, and I was gutted. I was honestly so sad because he was like a buddy of mine. We would talk incessantly, like all the time throughout the workday. He came over on Friday, and he had told me the news in person that he was going to have his last day on Monday. And I immediately was like, no, 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 not really sure. Like, I'm so sad, but I just want you to know, like, when you leave tonight, like, I'm just already feeling weird about that. Like, when you leave tonight and I'm not going to see you ever again, I really hate, like, I'm going to give you a hug because I'm a hugger, but like, I don't really know what to say. Like, I felt like really uncomfortable because I didn't know. I want him to know how much I'm going to miss him, but I also don't want to make him feel sad, or there's a lot of like moving parts. So I know that something that you've said in the past that has always stuck in my mind is how are you going to finish well? That has been a question that you've asked me in the past, and
It's a great
it's
question.
really, really stuck with me. And I think about that with a lot of my friendships because for Seamus, I know that it's going to be different. I'm going to see him on tomorrow and Wednesday as like parting ceremony-esque, like we're going to hang out a couple more times before he leaves, but that's really going to be it for like a while. And I don't want to make it weird because like he's just a friend of mine. So like we've had feelings for each other or anything like that. So like I don't want to make it like too intimate or intentional because I don't want to make things weird. But I also like want him to know that like I'm bummed and I'm here for him if he needs me. And like, but in reg- it's really hard. When I've been thinking through how to finish well with him, I kind of like feel at a loss because as we talked about in our previous podcast, you want to do what's best for the other person, not for what you really need, but for what they really need. Well, Seamus would just probably never want to see me again and like just be fine with that and never have to deal with a closing conversation because he's not a relational guy. He doesn't like that. It makes him feel weird. So if I'm doing it for him, I would just say like, peace, brother, and it'd be done. But I think that's where I am starting to get like tricked up with my own friendships because I want to do what's best for them, what they want. But so yeah, I don't know. Again, a lot of my times my answer is I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Find myself getting more indecisive, like more indecisive, more indecisive because I want to make the right decision. I've had situations in the past where a very similar situation has happened. I got close with a friend and then we moved across the country and I handled it really wrong. I handled it really wrong and done it another time where I thought I've handled it well and we were really intentional in our conversations, but then it never really came to fruition. Nothing really fell through as we planned. So I don't want I find myself scared to make decisions, especially with friends because I don't want to make the same mistake. I don't want to traumatize them. I don't want to be traumatized. I don't want them to be mad at me. I don't want them to I think that's where I get nervous because I don't want to make a bad decision. And I know that doesn't really answer your question at all, but it definitely is something I'm thinking about. How do I finish well? How do I finish well with Seamus, who I talked with for hours and hours and hours a day, and then now he's just leaving and moving back to Jersey? Like, I don't know. I really don't know. It's such a weird thing.
Well, what
So
I
let me
tell it,
ask you a question then that
sure,
goes with that.
go ahead.
Unless you want to go. No, you
No,
go,
I'm
you go, you
ready.
go, you go.
I'm ready. I'll remember what I'm going to say.
Okay, well, okay.
All right. So while you're
Is
looking for
it
that
fair
question,
to say?
okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Nope, that's all right. Don't lose that question.
No.
So
Okay, go ahead.
let me give a couple things. One, all relationships are intentional. If they are not intentional, then you're doing something wrong. And I'm not saying that you need to get weird or when you meet somebody for the first time or whoever takes Seamus' job and I want to have an intentional conversation with you to let you know exactly where I stand. No, that's weird. Okay. But all of our relationships should be intentional. I'm intentional in every single one of my relationships. Even if they don't know that I'm being intentional, you know that I just don't have haphazard relationships. all my relationships, all the guys and the girls that I've known, all my student athletes, everybody, I go in with intentionality. And by the time they know I'm being intentional, it's way too late. I've been intentional for too long, and I'm already going to get out of this relationship what I need to get out. And it's usually to help them be better, because I want to make people be better.
Mo, I just have to interrupt you there really quickly, because I remember you told me one time, that you don't have enough time to not be intentional. So I remember you saying that to me, and I was like, oh my God, every single thing that Mo does is intentional. And then I was like, I don't know, one time, like you said, you were going to like text me like this like show to watch or something, and you didn't. And I was like, oh my God, this is intentional. Is he trying to teach me something? Is he trying? Like, I would dig into every single thing that you did or didn't do, because
tell
I
the
was
story
like,
better.
he doesn't have enough time to not be intentional.
Remember when you asked me if I was going to be at some college thing? What was
Yes,
that?
I do.
You tell the story about what is
It's
it?
so funny how like you say one word and I know exactly like what you're referring to. So I get separation anxiety from my like really close people. So like I was hanging out with Mo nonstop for like a month. I don't even know. But like we would have practice twice a day, and then we would meet like for at Chick-fil-A to talk about captain stuff, leadership stuff. It was probably like 4 additional hours a day that we were talking. So I was having separation anxiety from Mo, and it was Friday. We just had our second practice. So we were like done for the weekend. Like we didn't have Saturday morning practice that week or whatever. I'm freaking out. I'm like, I'm not going to see Mo for 48 hours. Like, this is weird. I see him every day for 12 hours. And so, in a last ditch effort to like see Mo again, to like, you know, have some normalcy in my life, I was like, Mo, please, like, we're having a swim team, like, Friendsgiving. Like, can you please come tonight? Like, please, please. It's like at one of the girls' like dorms. Like, please come. And you were like, so sick and tired of me asking you like a million times. And you were like, oh yeah, I'll be there, like for sure. And I thought for sure, like, I was like, oh my God, I had finally convinced him. I have done it. Mo never hangs out with us with like extracurricular activities ever, like ever. So I was like, oh my God, I was the one. I was the chosen one that got him to come to something like outside of like practice or like leadership talk. So I'm like waiting there. It's like 7 p.m. Like I'm like on the couch. I'm like texting him like, where are you at? You know, like, did you get the address? Like I sent it to you, like all the stuff. And he's like, I'm not coming to that. I was mortified. I was like hyping it up the whole day. Like I got Mo to come to Friendsgiving. Like this is going to be so great. I'm not coming to that.
That's exact.
I'm
I
like,
think that's exact.
you gotta be joking me. Separation
I'll see you on Monday
anxiety, like,
morning.
in
Don't be
full
late to
effect.
practice. And so yes, that's the story. Be relational, be intentional, do everything that you need to do in the relationships that you have. So I'm going to give everybody, Bay, I'm giving this to you. I'm giving it to all of our Gen Z listeners out there. This is a great way to be intentional. What I do is I make sure I have people's birthdays. Once I have their birthday, I put that in my calendar. On their birthday, I usually text, and I will text a specific, very personal message. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it is heartfelt, depends on the relationship. But I may not see somebody all year, talk to them all year, but they will get a message from me on their birthday. I did this 2 days ago. There was a guy that lives in California, because now I live in Texas. And before I left California, I got his information. I was like, hey, let's keep in contact. So he and I did every now and again. And I finagled a way to get his birthday, and I got it. And then last year, I sent him a text message on the wrong day. I was like, hey, man, happy birthday. He's like, my birthday's in November. And I was like, oh, sorry, dude. So then 2 months later, last year, I said, hey, happy real birthday. And he laughs. He goes, oh, well, we didn't talk for another year. This year, a couple days ago, it was his birthday. I know it's his real birthday because I screwed it up last year. So I opened up my text messages, and most of us who have text messages, you can see all like, when's the last time? And last time I texted him was on his birthday last year. And I text him, happy birthday, brother, and a couple other things, and just kind of a quick little few sentence story about whatever. And he goes back and forth. We're talking about family, all this kind of stuff. And at the very end, he just says, I just want to say thank you. You're one of the few people that always remembers my birthday. That's it. We're not best friends. I don't talk to the guy hardly ever. But because I reach out, it gives me a chance to be intentional with him. Now, I do that with other people, and I've kept up with them on their birthdays for years. And as I've gone over the years, there's some people that I kind of knew didn't want me, didn't really care about me reaching out. And so they slowly were removed from my list. When I take their birthday out of my phone, it's not that I'm not ever thinking about you, but I'm just thinking, okay, that's the last piece of intentionality that I have. Okay. And so, babe, that's a great tactic, if you will, a strategy. And you might want to try it with Seamus. Unless he listens to this podcast, he wouldn't know, but you could say, hey, my birthday is whenever. When is your birthday? When he tells it to you, he's not going to remember your birthday. You'll remember his. You write it down. Don't say anything. And then on his next birthday, it will have been 2 months from tomorrow or 8 months from tomorrow or whenever it is. And if you're like, hey, happy birthday, haven't seen you in a while, work's not the same without you, that's intentional right there. That's not weird because people are used to you getting a hold of them on their birthday. But Mo, why don't I just reach out to them on Facebook or on Instagram or whatever? Because there's something about having somebody's actual phone number, because it's one more piece of intentionality. Yes, there are people that I know that I don't have their phone numbers that I see on Facebook, and I'll say happy birthday sometimes, not all the time, because if I don't have your phone number on my phone, we probably don't have a connection for the most part that my happy birthday, for instance, is going to be heartfelt. Not that I wouldn't do it. Sometimes I see people that randomly 100 years ago, and I'll say, hey, happy birthday. I see, I saw on your Facebook or whatever. And if they seem like I'll do that because I'll say if they want to engage, then maybe we end up connecting and it's like, hey, let's talk or whatever. Case in point, today, I got a message today in Instagram from one of my old soldiers. And she was like, hey, chaplain, hope things are going well. I have a question for you. Can we talk? And I just put, absolutely. And she puts, what's a good phone number to call you at? I gave her my phone number and we're going to connect. Well, I haven't talked to that soldier in 4 years, 5 years, but I remember but before then, she and I were in the same unit for about 4 or 5 years. So I've known her since about 2015 or so. And I've helped her through some hard stuff. Now, does she want to talk about that? I don't know. But what do I tell her? What did I tell her when she moved from the unit? I said, hey, remember, once I'm your chaplain, I'm always your chaplain. So if you ever need me, you know where to find me. For whatever reason, she didn't have my phone number, but now we're going to connect. So you have to look for that intentionality, babe. And so with Seamus tomorrow, that's a great way to do that. Yeah. Then you'll see, because what if you get a hold of him on his birthday and he says, man, I really miss work. And what are you guys all doing? Do you guys still hang out at that place? And you can say, yeah, come and see us or whatever. We'd love to see you. That's more intentionality, because then maybe that's a reconnection point for him. You never know what people are going to need and when they're going to need it. And that's why I'm always looking for a reason to connect with my old student athletes, my old parishioners from the churches that I pastored, my former soldiers. I always want to connect because I'm looking for ways to put into other people.
And if you don't end well, then you can't do that, which is like, I think,
absolutely
a motivator for me to make sure that happens, whatever way it does, to make sure that it happens, because then you can't move forward. Like you can't, like you said, maybe some people don't want you to reach out then because like you were a jerk to them or weren't intentional for any reason. Like, hey, I worked with you for 8 months and you don't have anything to say to me, like when I leave. Like, you never know like how people are gonna like react. So that makes a lot of sense. And I just want to ask this question because I feel like, I don't know, my mom would not mind me sharing this because she listens to the podcast. But I love her to death, and I find a lot of similarities between me and her when it comes to friends. We are extremely buddy-buddy with people when we first meet them. We love them, we're obsessed with them, separation anxiety. Then it's like, "You know what? I've hung out with you nonstop for quite a while. I think I need a break."
It's very normal.
But because we've been hyping it up, like, "Oh my god, I can spend every single second with you, and I love hanging out with you, and blah, blah, blah." It, like, just comes as a shock to the other person. They can get offended or whatever the case is. So, I love my mom so much, but she is hysterical, and I would say she will not have a conflict conversation for the life of her. She would rather, like she would rather eat glass than, like, tell somebody that somebody made her upset. So, she has this one friend, and they love each other so much, but they kinda go back and forth like a lot of girls do with their friendships of, like, "Yeah, she kinda hurt my feelings with this," or, like, "She loves me, we're going to brunch." Like, I never know, like, where they stand really. And it just got me thinking, like, my mom has few really, really, really good best friends, and I would say that's similar to me. Like I shared, I can count on my hand how many best friends I have. So, and I know that a lot of that is because she finds so much solace and peace and fun with her husband, my dad, but I just couldn't help but thinking, like, do you think that generally as people get older, they stop investing as much into their friends? Like, do you think that that is like a general statement? And like, I know we talked about it a little bit, but like sometimes you change into a different phase of life, and or I can think of all the phases of life my mom had different friends because I was in middle school or changed schools or softball or swim or whatever the case was. She was around a lot of different parents, but none of them became her best friend. None of them became her best friend. Like out of all of the different like societies or whatever I was a part of, she stayed pretty cordial with a lot of them. And I'm just thinking like, was that because I wonder, like, was that because she felt fulfilled with her friends? Was that because she, like, wasn't looking for any more? Did she like, I'm just curious. Like, I feel like a lot of people that are as they get older, they just don't really I don't hear a lot of older people talking about their friends as much. I hear a lot about their kids, I hear a lot about cousins and sisters and husbands, but I don't really hear too much about, like, newer friends, like, or even old friends. I don't know. Is it just, like I know that's probably unique to my situation because I can think of a lot of older people that have really, really amazing friends forever. But I am just kinda curious, like, as you get older as well and you do change in those life stages, do you have to be just as intentional with friends that might not be in the same life stage as you? Or, like, does that work for the same category of, like, finishing well when people move across the country? Like, I'm curious to know when I do get married, am I gonna have a talk with, like, all my single friends and be like, "I'm married now, like, you might not see me as much," or I don't know, like, what shouldn't friends just be there for you no matter what? Like, why do you have to, like, talk to them about it? I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I think that's, again, why people do have falling out as friends, because the answer to your question
Yeah,
is you have to be intentional with everything that you do, especially
I see.
w- especially when those things happen. I think communication's always a good thing. I think you always need to have those conversations. I think it's important.
I was just mind blown.
Okay.
Everything that I just had a question about all comes back to what you just talked about,
All right. Go for
which
it.
is you have to be intentional no matter what. Whether that is they know that you're being intentional or not, you have to be intentional no matter what. We have to start living by your phrase. We don't have time to not be intentional anymore because you're kind of right. I mean, kind of right. You are very right. You're very right. That that gives me a lot to think about because I feel like I try to avoid being intentional because I'm scared of doing it wrong. But I feel like I can always preface with that. That can add like another vulnerable aspect of the conversation to the intentionality piece. Like, hey, I've tried to be intentional in the past with friends. It has bit me in the butt, vice versa. I'm just nervous that I'm going to make a mistake with you. So I'm coming to you to talk with you about like how I can be the best friend I can in this new phase of life, or now that I moved across the country, or insert any change. I think that helps. That really helps my brain a lot when it comes to friends. Preface and be intentional with your conversations to them. Boy, have a lot of conversations to have.
I think you do. Intentionality is always good. And if people were more intentional with their conversations and their relationships, then we wouldn't have a lot of these problems. Again, I'm an over communicative person. I don't think any one of my student athletes, in the case of you and all the girls that ever swam for me, they'd probably be wondering, why isn't Mo having a last conversation with me about the changes and these kind of things? Because I always talk about what's important at that moment. And so when we care about relationships, for whatever they're going to be, like I'm not having conversations with people because I think that I need to be friends with them for the rest of my life. I'm trying to be responsible for being a good steward of the relationships that God's given me. And so if I can say, well, I know this person for whatever reason, and I'm intentional in the way that I connect with them, that's all I can do. And so, yeah, if somebody moves across the country or whatever, I always want to be able to go back. And if somebody says, Mo, whatever happened between us, like, I feel like our relationship is strained. I always want to be able to go back and say, well, remember we had a conversation about whatever, and you decided, and I want them to be able to say, oh, yeah, that's right. Can we connect again?
Yep.
I'd say, yeah. I remember I had one student athlete, and she and I were really close, and I helped her through a lot of her relationships and all these kind of things. And this was years ago. And I remember I would meet with her on a weekly basis, and then she wanted to continue to meet on a weekly basis after she had graduated. And I just said, look, one, you're not going to have time because you're going out into the real world and going to have a job and stuff like that. We could talk on the phone once a week, but I don't think that's the best use of your time or my time. And so why don't we connect maybe once a quarter, once a trimester throughout the year? And I had to help her understand what she was really asking for, which was, Mo, you've been speaking into my life. I really appreciate that. What you're saying in my life is important. I don't want to lose that. And I tried to help her feel good about and understand, and she did at the end, that, yeah, well, I don't need to be talking to Mo every day. He's not coaching me. You know how it is, babe. When you guys come to swim practice,
Oh, yeah.
whatever you went through that day, it's just you're talking to the other girls about it. You're talking to your coaches about it. I mean, it's just, we're all part of it. And so it's a lot different, just like family. When you move away from home from being in high school, you don't see your parents every day. So it's a different relationship. When you get done with your roommates that you live with now, it's going to be a different relationship. I think you live with Sarah right now, right?
Yeah.
Who's one of your best friends.
Sarah, Lauren, and Taylor. Yes.
Which all those girls are really good friends. And so here's my encouragement to you. How do you be intentional with those relationships now, so that if one of you, a couple of you, or all of you get married within the next 1, 2, or 3 years, so it's not just, yeah, we were so good of friends, and then so-and-so got married and she was gone, and so-and-so got married and she was gone. It was like we were all such good friends and then we weren't. You can get rid of a lot of that by prefacing it with intentionality. And it's not about being weird and awkward and be like, let's talk about being intentional. So it's little conversations here and there. That's what we talked about last time, right? It's the conversations that you have with them so that you're ready, so that it's a natural ending well. That's what I want for you, and that's what I want for all of our people, especially Gen Z. Relationships are so important now that we're not in front of each other. If this were 10 years ago and we were going to do a podcast, we would probably have to be sitting in the same room together, because it would have been weird to be online. But then COVID happened, and now it's normal. Right. The good thing about being online is that you and I can be talking 2,000 miles apart. But the bad thing about being online is sometimes we think, I'm still going to be as close with this girl as I was, because she was my roommate. And then you're like, well, no, that doesn't
Yep.
work, because even though we're online, we could talk every night. But let's say you were all, it was this time next year, and you all live in different places, and you all decide, we're going to get together every night at 8 p.m. and we're going to talk about our days. Well, that would help. But there's something about walking in the door and throwing your keys down and saying, I had a horrible day. And, well, I had a horrible day too. And the other one's like, I had a great day. You can't fake that. That's part of living life together. And so, are you and I living life together? Absolutely. But it's a lot different than when we saw each other on deck every single day at 6 a.m. and then again later on at 2 p.m. and then for an entire Saturday, and then we go to conference for 4 days. It's a lot different, right? Same thing with your friends
It's a
now.
lot different.
It's So how do you get ready for that? I think Gen Z maybe has trouble with that, because we're trying to make our online relationships exactly what we need. And the first thing I tell people is you've got to be in community in front of one another.
No, this has been so helpful for my brain. And I think it really does answer my very initial question, which was how do we make the most of the last years of our 20s? I feel like a lot of first thoughts wouldn't be, well, I'm going to be more intentional with my friendships. That wouldn't be like my first thought if I was in my early 20s. But I can see now how, because I wasn't intentional with those friendships, how it has hurt me now. So I don't want that to happen again. And I really do feel like if I was intentional with those friends and finished well, quote unquote, with them, I could potentially have more girls standing next to me in my wedding. So like, not saying that like the wedding is the end all be all, but like it's a pretty good representation of your really good friends up until the point that you have lived. So that motivates me to, not the wedding, but the like in general, finishing out my 20s and getting more from these last 3 years than I have from the beginning of my 20s with friends is a motivator for me to be intentional, because I want to get more life out of these last 3 years when it comes to being relational. So that's really helpful for me, and I can make active changes and decisions to do that with all of my friends, whether that's Seamus that's leaving at the end of the week, or Sarah, who I live with every day. So thank you for that. That helps my brain a lot.
Yeah. My closing thought would be this to you and to every other Gen Z person, every young person out there. I bet you can be more intentional with your relationships. So think about your relationships, whether you have 3 friends or 17 friends, it doesn't matter. And how do you be relational? How do you be intentional? Don't worry about the number. Be more concerned about, how do I just be a person who is worthy of hanging out with? And how do I be real? And how do I be a person that is intentionally encouraging people? And I think that's really gonna change the trajectory of the way you make friends.
I remember in college, you would always tell me when I was talking to you about being intentional with dating, like you want to become the person that you're looking for. Like that was always something that you told me, because you can have this long laundry list of like things to check off a box, but honey, that's not you. They're not looking for you. So I think what you just said about like becoming a friend that's worth being friends with is very similar, just in like a friendship way. And I didn't really think about that until now. But now that you say that, it reminds me of my friend Rach, who I don't know if she listens to this podcast or not, but I told her the other day that we mentioned her in the podcast. So we're mentioning her again. When the very first time I met with Rach, I thought she was amazing. She is amazing, but I was like almost intimidated and scared to like talk to her. So we get coffee one time, and she tells me the exact same thing. She wanted to be a friend. She wanted to become a friend worth being friends with. Like she wanted to be someone that she would want to be friends with. Like you have to be a good friend. What did she said? You have to be a good friend to have good friends. And that really stuck with me for a really long time as well, because why would somebody want to be friends with me? I don't finish end things well. Like, I'm not intentional. I'm like up and down, here, there. Why would somebody want to be friends with that? So that just makes me rethink a lot of things, and makes me want to be more intentional with my friends. And I think that is, it's easy. We make things a lot more complicated than they need to be. But if you just look at it like that, would you want to be friends with you based on the actions that you're doing to your friends? Really simplifies it a lot. So that's helpful.
Good final thoughts. I like it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Rising Tide Leadership podcast, POV Gen Z. This episode was about the fear of turning 30. So thanks so much for talking, Mo, and for helping all of us be more intentional. Bye.